Well, I guess when they mean on the shelf, I guess they mean on the shelf. Maybe Michael J. Straczynski should pay attention to what really is going on at the CW. Uh, just a couple of notes. If you notice that the programming has been a little light, do apologize. I ended up getting a little bit under the weather. And no, I'm sorry. It wasn't COVID, but we were under weather. We thank you for the well wishes for those of you online who sent well wishes. Yeah, I was really under the weather for about 2 weeks. And if you could hear it in my voice, it's still somewhat a little off on there. So we're going to try to do our best to strive and push. The other half is 1992. I spent some time in Florida for 10 years. In the 90s, we had Hurricane Andrew. Just recently, we had Hurricane Ian that had hit Florida. And looking at the footage on there, and I send our prayers out to the families, to my friends and family members, and those out there have been affected by this storm. It's sort of a rehash of what Andrew was in 92. People don't really talk about that. The major differences between the two is that Andrew was more wind than water, than rain, but the damages pretty much are in the same category. I mean, this is going to end up in the billions on there. I mean, I think, what was it, 27 billion under Andrew, 64,000 homes destroyed, over 64,000 destroyed. And, I hope everybody will do well. And for those places that are about to get the storm, the back tail end of that, let's hope, you ride out your fare better than those in Florida. So, Babylon 5. We heard before that basically the CW was going to do a reboot with Warner Brothers, but that was just right before Nexstar was about to buy off the CW, and we had reported that J. Michael said they're just going to shelve it until this deal is over. But lately, in the last couple of weeks, and especially while I was out sick, there's been a lot of messaging through Twitter and through some of the media outlets. It looks like, okay, the way it's sounding is like, I don't think that this reboot is going any further. There is some sort of project that has happened, sort of. Some secret project that's been in the works, but nothing to do with this reboot. But that's another story in itself. But what has happened is now J. Michael, JMS, has asked the fans to rally back to Warner Brothers to make sure that the reboot goes ahead at the CW. On there, I'm going to read a little bit. It's off of CBR. Babylon 5 creator Michael J. Straczynski says that if the fans want the CW planned reboot to see the light of day, they need to let Warner Brothers TV know. The fate of the Babylon 5 pilot may be decided at the end of the month. Straczynski wrote on Twitter, though much of the CW was bought by Nexstar Media Group, the decision also rests heavily with Warner Brothers TV. If fans want their support for a B5, let them know that this is happening. Now is the time. And the thing is, and there's a lot more to this, which goes into the story, Babylon 5 itself and everything. We don't need a reboot, honestly, JMS. The thing about it is, and during the time while I was sick, gave me a little bit of time to think about this reboot. And you have to remember one thing, is that you got to look at what's the old saying, what have you done for me lately? Now, I've always liked JMS's writings, and he's done some good stuff in the past. He's worked on many different TV shows and animated Twilight Zone episodes from the '80s, animated series like the Real Ghostbusters, detective stories like Jake and the Fat Man, Murder She Wrote, Walker Texas Ranger, and of course, obviously, Babylon 5 and The Crusade, and another great series which basically doesn't get talked about a lot is Jeremiah, which is if you haven't seen Jeremiah, it is a really good story. It's not respected like everything else he's done before, and you can catch it online. I believe. I'm trying to remember who had it last. I think it was Amazon that had it last on there. And then, of course, he's had a couple of the short Babylon 5 movies, which didn't do too well, which were very poorly written. Then he did Sense 8. That, I think, is a bigger turn for JMS, because Sense 8, what the fuck was he going to with this? I mean, I'm sorry, the amount of sex that was in the series, and with the dildos and all. I mean, what was he trying to make a porn movie? I mean, the story had promise, but then when you threw the sex part in it, hey, listen, I'm all out. If you want romance or anything like that, but when you start sticking dildos on former cast members of Doctor Who, I mean, you get into a point here where you're like, maybe this shouldn't be on Netflix, and more like should be on Skinamax at this point. Like I said, go back and watch Jeremiah. Want to see some good writing from him? Jeremiah and Babylon 5. Really good stuff. And this is the reason why I said the last time we've discussed this, that I had my doubts on the reboot. Because basically things change, people change. JMS has changed. The way he talks online lately, and all you gotta do is look on his Twitter account, or Facebook account, and look how he's talking about things and politics and all that. I don't want that in my stories. I don't want to be, I want a story like Babylon 5, but it doesn't have to be Babylon 5. It could be something new. You don't need to go back to the well. I mean, if you want to go back to the Babylon 5 storyline, do a different story. Something earlier, something later. There are plenty of stories you can write on this. The last couple of stories you wrote didn't do well. Didn't do well at all. Wasn't favored by the fans. They watched it, but they didn't enjoy it. See, and this is the fate of Hollywood. It just continues. There's this rotation constantly with all this garbage, and with what's gone on with Marvel and DC, and what's happened with Star Wars and Star Trek and Doctor Who. And you see all this is just getting ripped apart. This is why anime is doing fantastic right now. For the reason is there are great stories to tell, and they continue to make great stories. It's not liked by everybody, but there's always something for everyone out there. If you're a sports fan, they got sports for you. If you want something with an LGBTQ storyline, it's there too. People criticize it and say, oh, it's cheese pizza, this, and that. But yet they got no problem with what's going on Twitter or on Instagram as far as what's being posted there. They have no problem at all. And, there's a couple stories we got coming up that, people are had said a couple things overseas about cheese pizza that they're okay and that should be allowed. Think about that for a minute. This is the mentality. This is how can we put this? The insanity, this is the point where people need to take their dollars elsewhere. And you need to show Hollywood this situation. You know, you already see this from the Quantum Leap show. Just in 2 episodes, they lose the 1 million viewers. Come on. That should tell you alone where you're headed. You know, you're heading to CW numbers, and this is why CW failed. The average viewer for the CW was age 58, and that is not primetime viewers. You have to remember, the CW is on a full 24-hour day cycle. Plenty of other shows that are nothing like their primetime stuff. That's why their numbers are low in primetime, because those major viewers are not watching them. And the people that they do want to watch, the younger viewers, aren't sticking around either. So how much of a Babylon 5 fandom is going to watch this? Really, truly. You might be fighting for something that literally, you know, it's not going to work out. You're going to have to show, JMS is going to have to show a lot more to the fans on what he wants to do with this series. Race swap, gender swap, sexual swap, you know, that's not what the show was. It was a really, really good show. Great stories, great character, one main story revolving around the whole entire 5 seasons. Even though the 5th season wasn't that great. But I still watched it. It had its issues. But there was some good episodes in between there. So, that's one thing that it was about. It was about 2 or 3 episodes of the entire 5th season I really enjoyed. The rest of the season, But seasons 1 through 4 were great. It was fantastic. Good stories. Good pickup stories in between also as well. So by the time you get this video, things might have changed. You know, Warner might greenlight it, or they might just completely cut it off. I mean, we're already at the end of the month by the time this is it. Actually, we're going to be in October by the time this is here. So let me know in the comments below your feelings on this. Don't forget to hit subscribe, like, share, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in, and bye-bye now.